Very much, Jacques. Thanks very much. Thanks for that, and thanks for that poem. Um, and thank you, everyone, for coming here. Most of you I know from different spaces. Um, I'm going to read some poems from a new book of poems. It's a book of poems that's been published by Deep South, and there's a it'll be launched next year in Johannesburg, and there's an invite in the chat box, a PDF at the top for the launch, if anyone's around on the 10th of January, and it's a Saturday. It'd be very nice to have you there. So these poems are from there. Some of you might have heard some of them before, because I think I read some of them about a year ago, perhaps, or versions of them anyway here. So I hope it's fine if you hear them again, which should be okay, hopefully. I'd like to,
And so can
sorry,
you see
what?
the screen sharing? Sorry to interrupt. Can you see the screen sharing? Is it there? Can people see the
This,
poems?
the screen share, yeah, I can see it. If you scroll, does it work? Yeah, yeah, okay. It
Okay,
looks good.
great.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wasn't sure.
No, that's fine.
I can only see the Word doc. I can't see anything else.
And so, I wanted to thank Robert Barrett, who's here for publishing the book, and other people who supported it in different ways are also here. So thank you very much. I really do value that and appreciate it. So the poems I'm going to read, they're from, as a context, it's from my childhood, from the primary school years. Um, uh, so it's not the 1970s to the first couple of years in 1980s, and it's set in a small holding area called Honeydew, which was outside Johannesburg. Now it's full of cluster homes, but then it was, dirt roads and plots and cows and tractors and sort of like a semi-rural environment. Um, so I suppose part of, whatever else the book is, part of it's also about sort of capturing that space before things change, the geographic space, besides the personal issues and the social issues and so on. Yeah, I'm just going to go for it. And I hope my internet is stable, by the way. If it's not, Ed, please interrupt me and I'll turn the video off or something, and that should help.
Okay.
Um, the reading's about 25 minutes. So I'm just going to go one poem after the other. The first one's called Barbed Wire. Mr. Stemmett's tractor grumbled up and down his rows of peach trees, across the dangling barbed wire that ran its rusted splinters between the plots, as if to say roughly here. Beneath the creaking of the pines, I watched his tractor go up and down through swollen ground. We had peaches too in our backyard, like thick red teardrops. Our lemons were bright as cokie suns above the dry grass. My gran in Durban, who was visiting, collected the apricots that had tumbled to the ground and boiled them on the gas stove. Jars burst in the kitchen with apricot eyelids and skew pips. Up near the pump house, the mulberries bled their peppercorns, and further down, a bitter apple tree leaned with its chapped elbows on a paddock fence. Ma said the oranges were too sour to eat, so they stiffened on their branches, mouldering on the sides like old planets. There were figs and plums by the vegetable garden tap, guavas bursting beneath the bathroom window in a bed of mud and light, and a sky shooting through a vine until someone burnt it down. My uncle, Ma said quietly, a little unsure if she missed the grapes. When winter came, my grand next door packed Mrs. Stemmett some old clothes and invited her for dinner. Bring the kids. There were always ghosts in our house. When things got tough, she plucked the chickens, her arms swelling. My uncle, a Lamaki, sat alone in the chicken hock with his red hair, the chickens clucking around him the hissing of eggs. Mr. Stemmet was a professor at the university, economics or chemistry, I think. One night, my dad watched him jump the only stop street on the way home. Drunk, looking for a leaf, he didn't see it coming. The barbed wire and the cosmos stopped him. Where am I? He said, dazed as my dad helped him out his tangled car. His kids, Afrikaans, like lots of plot kids, were a bit odd, my ma's words. They watched me riding my wooden go-kart my dad had hammered together with old lawnmower wheels. Can you borrow it to me? The eldest said. And they took it back with them, stepping across the rusted barbed wire. Into a land of thickening peaches, to a father with a problem, to a mother sighing to the bone. When they finally sold the plot to a nursery, I forget its name, the peach trees were ripped out, the nearby roads got tarred. Big trucks came with small trees, settled, waiting in long, hot rows. A sign was bolted at the gate. One afternoon, I watched the new boy marching up and down the lonely rows, practicing for cadets, red-faced, sweating in his brown beret and grey school shorts, saluting a sapling as he passed, stomping his right foot to halt, swiveling, stiff as a fork. Juffrouw Els. Juffrouw Els insisted we call her Ms., not Miss in English, I think because she was quite old. She was the first team netball coach and trained school athletics. She arrived at school in white tackies with a clipboard sticking out her basket, in tracksuit pants and a tracksuit zip-up top, her silver hair tongued up at the edges so it flared, a whistle tied tightly with a yellow ribbon to her wrist. It made her look like she wasn't really a teacher and longed, like most of us, for the end of class. The yellow meant she was in parlour, one of the school houses, and the quickest on the track. The others were kudu, green, nyala, blue. I was Eland, a slow and deliberate bull. I was fast in grade 1 until young Hendrik overtook me. He would have been the fastest boy in school, but his ma flipped her car at the trick bend just down the road from us after the corrugations, where the river sand started and the wattles gathered the dust. He came back to school weeks later with blotched cheeks, looking down at his shoes. Pitman van Rensburg was the fastest boy in school. He was in Impala and in Standard 5. Yolanda was the fastest girl. She was in Kudu, who always came nearly last. She huffed heavily as she passed, wheezing on the final bend of the 400 meters, each step planted into the ground, her hands out flat like a train to make her go a little faster. Mostly I went stiff up inside when Miss Els was near, with her little silver whistle wound tightly round her wrist. She took us for substitution once. If the class got too noisy, she would shriek or blow her whistle, or do both. There wasn't much difference between her whistle and her shriek. Sometimes things got worse, my sister said, who had her for help, I think. If you stepped over the line where they poured the poison to kill the grass. One day I passed her class and through the window saw Miss Els shrieking close at the boy's face she had told to stand like a sergeant in an American army movie. He shrunk his shoulders from her shriek and clutched his dog-eared A4 book. And then she grabbed his book, chucked it to the floor, and bashed his head against the wall. Quick, like the way you bounce a ball. So when Ms. Els took us for substitution, I tried my best to get a desk in the middle of the class. She shrieked in the tiled classroom. She shrieked and shrieked to whistle on the track, on the hot, baked netball court, where the girls puffed in their team bibs, as their tackies twisted and squeaked on the cracked cement, and the leather balls slapped hard into their raw hands. Betrothed. Emma beat all the boys in arm wrestling. We gathered round the desk to watch. So Mrs. Boyson sat us down to explain that we shouldn't be ashamed. Some girls were built that way, she said, so they could do the heavy work of lifting children. Emma blushed and was very quiet. She had thick forearms and broad shoulders. She rolled her long shirt sleeves just above the wrist and pushed her jersey up like a boy to the elbows. Mrs. Boyson was our standard one teacher. She was a real teacher in the old ways. She wore a pinafore, grey-haired, pinned back tightly. She always had a piece of chalk in her hands. Once I went up to her desk feeling smart and said, "Mrs. Boyson, how did Noah feed all the animals in the ark?" She paused, looked up from her marking, threw her eyes to the ceiling to think a bit, then settled their walls back on me. God provided, she said. But God didn't help Emma very much when she couldn't spell in Afrikaans. Mevrouw Roos was younger than the rest. She had cold eyes bulging a bit like a fish's, and was only there for a little while. She was always walking into doors, as my ma sometimes said. One day she used lots of makeup to try hide the bruise. She saw me looking with I don't know what look I carried in my face, and her eyes grew even colder as they tried to shut me up. Mevrouw Roos used a thick piece of wood, smoothed out from lots of use, with something scribbled on the side in Coetzee. I think she borrowed it from Mr. Becker, who had a long double chin that made him look like he was always grinning. Emma held her hand out flat, the white showing, with streaks of red. The way you feed a horse a sugar cube, to be careful of its teeth. Mevrouw Roos didn't hold back. With the first cracks, Emma's eyelids flickered for each of the spelling mistakes she had made. It took a while for her to weep, through her scrunched eyes, as if she held on to the end of the world. But the tears came, dripping down her cheeks, in rows like planted seeds. Mr. Stradom. Mr. Stradom lived just up the road. He had 6 bull terriers with cruel, shark noses. They dragged him along, straining on their chains like a 6-headed bull terrier bouquet. He had a wife too, who lived behind the quiet of the willows that hid their house. In a garden you could hardly see, steaming with flowers. Only once saw who I thought was Mrs. Stradom flash past in her car, a blur of colours, driving very fast as if she was rushing back indoors to be behind a veil of green. Once Mr. Stradom walked his bull terriers across the bottom of our plot, stepping over the barbed wire tangled beneath the icy blue gums. My dad went down to sort him out. He returned, blushing. "He hit me," he said. We all went indoors. Things got worse between Mr. Stradom and my dad. Once we went riding a different way, up towards the main road where the cars poured. Mr. Stradom roared his bucky down the dirt road towards us, speeding up when he saw our skittish horses. My dad swore his horse siding. Mr. Stradom's bucky suddenly found its brakes, lights in swirling dust. His kid beside him looking pale. He got out. "Get down off that horse and I'll stuff you up," he shouted at my father, his hairy arms, his fists like lumps. Mr. Landman. Mr. Landman lived on the other side in a little red bricked house built from old railway house plans. He kept his barbed wire straight, but I only once saw someone tightening its branches, and I never saw anyone work his land. To step over there and slip along the artery of pines down to the road, which was easier for the blacks taking shortcuts across the plots. You had to grab the wire in the middle between 2 nests of spikes to push down as hard as you could. and curve your back to avoid the barbs that waited above you with their grim stars. You kept your shadow close to the trail of fallen pine needles so you could quickly slip back if Mr. Landman's dog noticed, which it never did, but always seemed to. Mr. Landman's stoep was very quiet, and was even quieter once Mrs. Landman died. But one spring, for some reason, he suddenly stepped out his little railway house in his khaki shorts and shirt and sun hat brimmed with the skin of a meerkat, his chin like a shriveled peach that had been on the branch for a long time. He climbed onto his rusted tractor and kicked it into life, and began to plough his dry earth back and forth, back and forth. He did this all day, as if in a trance, his thin arms burning up like sticks. Weekend wages. Ma took out the meat from the old Kenwood deep freeze and let it thaw on the top all morning. When it softened, she weighed it out on her baking scale, cut and chopped a little of this, that, adding some back so they all got the same amount. They came down in their blue overalls in a group, quietly, humbly, as if asking for something they already expected. Washed the dog's dishes while they waited, swept the courtyard again with the stiff broom. My dad counted the money and brought the register out with the cash in gem clips. The ones who'd been longest got more, the youngest, the least of the sugar brown and green notes. They signed the register, one by one, Izzy putting a shaky X next to his name, Isaiah. Then Ma handed them the mealie meal with their meat wrapped in sticky plastic, the older ones bending their knees slightly to give thanks. Sometimes my dad gave them a castle beer frosted from the fridge and said, "Don't get too bubbleless, there's heavy lifting to do tomorrow." When they left, they'd be boisterous, laughing loudly as they headed back up to the kaya behind the stables. For breakfast, my ma cut thick slices of white bread, 6 for each, ladling them with apricot jam. Sometimes there was peanut butter. She cut the bread buildings in half and settled them in the tin plates. They brought whatever container they had for the tea, a mug, a big empty jam tin with the label soaked off, or a battered tin teapot, so there was extra for the family. They'd come after feeding the horses or collecting the bones the dogs left on the lawn. There'd be a rest until 9. When someone new started, he got blue overalls from the hardware and a pair of fresh gumboots. 5 o'clock was knock-off time. One hot afternoon. One hot afternoon, sent to call him, I stepped with bare feet, politely through the Davelstorens, up there past the stables, to his rondavel with the thinning thatch, near the rubbish dump where they burnt the office paper. A plastic basin with a cloth wrung of its water, a battered kettle settled on some hissing stones. Through the peeling door that creaked, rotted out at the base, a sparse, round room with a concrete floor that stretched up into the cool tip of a cone where the light sneaked through the shredded patches. A spring bed on old paint cans, a little dented pillow, a jacket hanging on a hanger near a calendar hooked onto a nail. Izzy? I went once or twice. I went once or twice to Raymond Dodgen's house. He played cow patty fights with Dion. He had a friend up the road, Mark Hayes, who had a friend who raced BMX. He had all the outfits from the magazines, with padded pants and elbows and see-through shirts with logos printed down the sleeves. He rode the best bike in the shop and left it tangled on the lawn as if he didn't really care. Raymond clucked and brought it in for him. Raymond took us back to his house to show us the bullfrog that lived in the bush by the emptied-out pool, where sticks and leaves and a tractor tire gathered at the bottom with the green rain. Bullfrogs are poisonous, Dion said knowledgeably, but teased it with his swimming towel anyway, twisting it into a cook sister and flashing it before its fangs. Then it got a grip, and he yelped, panicking like a helicopter blade, swinging it round and round, I, giggling at the same time, with Raymond jumping and yelling, Satan, Satan, like Dion's dad did when he cursed them. Then Raymond rolled up the garage door to show us the kudu carcass dangling upside down like a trick miller. Then Raymond rolled up the garage door to show us the kudu carcass dangling upside down like a trick mirror besides a parked car. My dad's making bulletin, he explained in a matter-of-fact way. Raymond had an older but I forget his name. He was almost getting a beard, and I think had just got his call-up papers. He drifted in the background on his way to the kitchen. So Raymond let us quickly peep through a crack in his bedroom door at the scope centerfolds pasted all over his walls, checking for the shock in our faces. Mrs. Dodgen always came to watch Raymond play tennis, with a proud mole and sturdy shoes. She glared through the diamond mesh fence when he hit the ball too deep, clucked sharply Raymond, as she called him when she was annoyed. Raymond looked sheepish. For lunch, she poured us chips from a packet on different colored plastic plates, and we drank down Oros in matching plastic cups with frayed edges. We raced our bikes at Raymond's house, ramping along the pathways in the charred felt, my rally rattling. We pushed the go-kart down the road with Mark Hayes. I watched them go, through the dust, catching up. I baked in the sunlight, stepping through the thorn. The winter grass was warm and rising. We waited for our Mars with skew bikes, their pedals muddy. Mr. Dodgen was an electrician and bobbed up the driveway in his van. After work, he sat on the berm with his big mustard moustache and stoked his little wooden pipe. Underneath here. Our Mars were always organizing, so Dion became my friend. And once I slept over at his thatched house with their ducks that left feathers all over the place. It was planted at the top of a long, long slope that ran its way down to a small dam with reeds where Dion and his older butt flicked mud balls at each other. Lauren, Dion's little sister, jumped around in dungarees, had to put up with her two rough brothers. She got as good at giving lamies as she was at taking them, but cried twice when I was there. Mrs. Viljoen, Dion's ma, was a radiologist with a raspy voice and a yellow light around her hair when she smoked a cigarette. Her big smile always asked me about things she already knew, the way she'd see x-rays before the patient did. It made me feel there were no secrets between Ma's, and with my Ma, it was mostly true. Mr. Viljoen was a geologist. One day he explained that all the water flowed away from them. There's nothing underneath here but rock, he complained, kicking aside a duck that squawked and jumped into the pool with the others. As if he had built a house of feathers at the top of the slope, and his eyes saw the water drain away right in front of him. Mr. Viljoen, Dickie, played rugby for Transvaal in his heyday, and his photos of tackles and tries hung above his bar counter on the landing upstairs. He was good at woodwork too, and he passed us all on to his sons, who were quick with balls and gifted with wood. But it was always there in his half smile that was almost a wince. Something drained away. The pool beneath the earth, a silent wafer. All the water flows away from here. One day, much later, I wandered into a bar back in Honeydew after university, and Mr. Viljoen was there, pushing through the scrum to the counter. I tapped him on the shoulder as brightly as I could. He seemed surprised to see me, at first or uncertain, as if he was deciding who I'd been, or as if I'd stopped his dash with the ball on the way to a try line he could still faintly see. Like most friends' dads, I didn't know him well. His face looked troubled, and his smile still winced, as if buried halfway under the earth. We spoke a bit, as he fidgeted with his keys in the crowded bar that early Friday night. Ten. I guess I would have preferred a nag with slow heels, icicle ankles, egged on. Instead, I got the next show jump with a fiery mane and short neck. He could turn a tiki, as Ma sometimes said. Once he galloped up the paddock without me, my dad yelling, "Pull back, pull back." He tossed me, light as a shirt, over the gumpole fence that, maybe as a sign of mercy, he decided not to jump. I got up from the dirt, patted off my tracksuit pants, hitched with devilsturms and dust, looked at his startled arms. Once I got my wish. The riding school's mare, a grey with swollen legs, got her stuck in the dam where she preferred to be, trying to do a U-turn. Judy, up on the bank, through her clenched teeth, hissing for me to kick with my waterlogged veldskoens. Another time, I took Trigger out, the colour of rusted tin. A saddled fire. "Oh, yes," he said, and fled beneath me, as if he ran fast enough, he might actually turn into tin. Once I fetched the milk, it was getting dark. The blue gums were ghosts. I pedalled fast. The last poem I'm going to read is called Outride. Outride. The frog is rotten in the hoof, so he yanks it out with a pick, then smears the tick grease near the soft of its contracting anus. I scrape the tuft of pelt back with a curry comb, turn to the tail, tugging carefully at the bows, take the brush to the shuddering lake in its back, shift the bit between the bones of its long teeth. It grinds at the metal. I load the saddle. My dad returns and heaves the girth up a few more notches until it wins. "There," he says. He snaps down the stirrups to let it know there will be a weight. I place my veldskoen in the pressure, and he helps me hitch myself up into the furrow. Then he mounts and twists his horse's neck to lead the way down the driveway past the pines. My father rides up ahead of me through knots of river sand, slaps his riding boot with his crop to warn his skittish horse. His hips rock in the saddle where they're settled in the hull of a small boat. He's looking up across the plot through the restless blue gums at the rundown stables. We ride past Mr. Landman's stoep with its rusted swing for two, the turn-off to the Warren's house. Mr. Warren fixed Wayne's motorbike in the syringa's crackling shade, the garage door rolled up behind him. The houses I still don't know, hidden behind the bushes, tangled in dust and dried out rain. We follow the path down the slope, dumped with scrap iron, the gully that leaked its black water, mist rising like smoke from a ruin. Up past the lopsided gate, no one used anymore, its lock rusted and swollen long ago. And behind the fence, the angled wattles beating everything dry beneath them. The cranes and pulleys are still in the distance, rested on a Sunday. The trucks they used to mine the sand parked along the ledges, coated in a grey dust. On the left, the pottery workshop we visited for school. Danger, gevaar signs wired to the diamond mesh that ran all the way along the perimeter up to Paul Kruger, where Ma had to slow down because of the corrugations, flash through the spool left by the flay. Waves of icy wind rush up to my face, the long grasses up to my veldskoens. Down by the dam, we take them through the shallow, reeds splashing, red bishops flaring in a glow. Well, thanks, everyone.
Well, Alan, we've traveled far with you tonight. Thank you for that gorgeous reading. Can we have a round of applause for Alan, please, before we have questions?
Thanks very much.
No, no.
Hey, thank you, Alan. I do recall hearing one or two of those poems before, but that's a good thing actually. They're just very evocative and very vivid. And there's more that I'd like to say, but this is where we open up the floor for comments or questions. So if anyone has anything they'd like to say about what we've just heard, now is the opportunity to do this. It says my internet connection is unstable. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
yes, yes.
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 Is there anyone with questions for Alan?
Phew. Very nice hearing
Okay,
you read the.
Oh, thanks, Mindy.
Jacques, I see your hand is raised. Go for it.
For me?
Yes, Alan, I'm not sure if you want to field the questions because my connection is unstable, I think.
Okay, I don't hear any. Jacques, yeah, so Jacques, your hand is raised.
Okay, so I was very I've heard some of these before, and tonight I was struck by the layeredness of them, and I wondered, is this a book that you slowly wrote over a long time, or was there a sudden rush of inspiration? Because I, is this a time that you've written about before a lot? Because they I'm impressed by the sort of the unity of vision, and so I wondered if it's something that you had to have a couple of decades distance from it to write. How did these poems uh, come to be written, basically?
Thanks. I mean, it's an interesting question. This period for me always was incredibly vivid for all sorts of reasons, right? And I was continually, even as a young man in my 20s, living with these images and these situations and all the feelings that went with them, that felt they needed to be written as a poem. And I went through different waves, even sort of a novel at one point, a draft of, and but short poems I first tried, and I captured certain things in different ways, and some of them worked, but they never quite worked in the way that I felt completely comfortable with, and whatever that comfortable was. And about 2 years ago, something happened where I managed to find the right voice, I think it was, which is perhaps this narrative voice, perhaps there's a certain distance, that at least emotional distance that I have, that I was able to go back into them in a more narrative and quite graphic way, and with a lot of energy. So there are some that were written, or at least a couple that were written, about 3 or 4 years ago, say, but most of them happened in the last, I don't know, 3 years or something like that. So they did come out. A lot of them came out together, and I think it was because for me the voice and perspective worked. I'd managed to find like a way into writing about all that stuff that I'd wanted to write about, but in a way that opened it up, I guess, more than closed it down, possibly. Mm.
I think I think they're amazing, and the distance somehow heightens the sadness and the violence, and it makes them more poignant. But I think, do you know what happened, or did you just keep at it until one day you trusted the voice?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I always sort of trusted the different versions I wrote, kind of. I mean, some of them I don't think worked at all. Um, but I suppose those were sort of, ended up being sort of sketches, trying to sketch something, draw something. Yeah, it is a good point. I think there was a little bit, I mean, I think there was distance, somehow of a distance, and there was something around, I almost made a conscious effort to put aside my assumptions about my childhood that I would sort of talk about if I spoke to someone a dinner or something like that. Almost because there was a sense of wanting to recapture something that was good. I don't say good. There were good things, but like something about the energy of the place I wanted to capture that I sort of wanted to take back.
Mm.
So that was maybe one motivation, but some distance. Possibly coming to Argentina allowed me to have some more distance from that experience, from living in Joburg. There might have been something like that went on.
Mm.
Um, but I think there was a sort of the I don't know, I mean, I don't really like to talk about poetry in these sort of ways, but there is a sort of is that idea that poetry, when you write poems, you put on a mask, and it's not a sort of artificial way, but you write with a mask, and that is perhaps the voice, the consistency of the voice, and there's something quite dramatic about that, and so on. And I kind of feel there was something that I found the right mask in a way. I mean, it seems a bit
Mm.
sort of slightly funny way to talk about it, but and there is something dramatic about the voice in this. There's something storytelling about it. There's something around that which is new for me too.
Mm.
It's not necessarily it's a kind of a storytelling voice in many ways.
Mm.
And perhaps I gave myself permission for that, as opposed to the more personal or kind of perhaps even injured I person speaking about issues around childhood and that kind of stuff.
Mm. Oh, thank you. That's helpful and fascinating. Thank you.
Thanks, Jacques.
Yeah, Alan, I mean, a lot of ground was covered there in Jacques. It was a lovely question, and I loved your answer, Alan. Just the unpacking. I mean, I don't have much that I wanted to add. Just I think if I had a question, it would have been how you found that perspective, that way of seeing, and um, because I feel the excitement of some of those things. I feel definitely the violence, and
Yeah,
a lot of the writing is just it just through. It's amazing what one can infer from just the imagery, it's the concision. It's just beautifully done.
thank
So
you.
a gift to hear that. Thank you.
I was excited to write them, by the way. It was
Mm.
exciting for me to write them, so it's nice that you can pick up on that.
And the book is coming out soonish, right? So
Yeah, so launch is January the 10th, and I think Robert's put some sort of ordering information. Yeah, he's put some ordering information in the chat, so you can order it from him. But people in Joburg, hopefully, we can see you there. It's at David Kratt Books, which is in Rosebank.
okay.
But thanks very much, Ed and Jacques, for the opportunity, and everyone for listening.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah, it was just you. It's always special to finish the year with yeah
Thanks.
poetry's work on bias. Thank you. Yeah, and
Thank-
Kiara, you have your hand up high.
Hi everyone. Oh, hi everyone.
Bye.
Alan, Thank you so much for those readings. I adore the vivid nostalgia because I think our ages are quite different, but the memories feel the same. They feel almost exactly the same. It's beautiful, and thank you so much for reading those and being here with us. My question is more because I'm interested. We have a similar story because I'm also from Joburg and now I live in Argentina as well. And I just wanted to know what inspire or does your travels inspire your writing, new writing or old writing, to go back and change things that you've written before, or does it inspire you to do something new and different?
It's interesting. Where do you live in Argentina?
I live in Buenos Aires, the city, but I live in Avellaneda.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nice. Um,
yeah.
I don't know. For me, the things that I found most. It's funny, but I think because I've done a lot of writing about South Africa being here,
Mhm.
um, as well as local environment, of course, but more consistently about South Africa, even sort of going further back into family history stuff and researching and that kind of stuff. So I think that's the sort of distance and perhaps the kind of the longing as well for home that sort of forces you into creating stuff, or rethinking home in a sense, and as a way also of being part of the new environment. I think it's both together at the same time. So I would say most of my writing's been about that the last couple of years.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. If I may ask, where do you live in Argentina?
A place called Pergamino. Do you know? It's inland. Um, it's in the middle. It's about an hour and a half from Rosario. It's an agricultural
Okay,
city, so it's the farms. It's a
okay,
city, but there are farms
okay.
around
Oh,
here.
yeah, so we're quite a distance apart, but that's good to
Yes,
know. Thank you so much, Alan.
very nice.
Hey, thank you, Kira. Thank you, Alan. Mindy, I see your hand is raised there.
Yes. Um, the mask thing can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I just it struck me when you said that because I thought, isn't it more typical to be conscious of writing with a kind of a mask? And I know that's just a word and I don't really know what it means, but when you start in your earlier work and then less so in your later work, because that was, it's just like bubbling up in me, that question. I don't really know
Mm.
what to think about it, but I find it quite astonishing that you said that, actually.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe we mean. I mean, I think it's in a positive way. I mean, I suppose you might mean it in more of a psychological way, perhaps. So, you that or not.
No, I think the way I understood it when you said it is that you've got a kind of a almost like a thing that holds all those ones together in some intangible way. It holds that whole set of stuff together. I thought maybe that's what you meant.
I I mean, I mean it. I suppose I mean it more in a sort of a sense of. Um, I mean, some people might call it a voice, right? And I guess it's very similar to a voice. And I would say it works the other way. I would say the more your poetry develops, the stronger your mask becomes, your poetry mask. So it's a little bit more like the mask of the actor, or the mask of even the sangoma or something, or the mask of ritual. That's probably more what I mean. And and I think it becomes stronger. I think the stronger you poetry, that mask becomes even stronger, and that is your kind of what ends up being your voice. And for here, the kind of, if you want, the mask I found in a sense was a playful. It was something playful. It was something more like more narrative than my usual poetry storytelling, amongst other elements. Uh, Perhaps something more permissive around the vividness of images that perhaps in another poem I might have kind of held back a bit. But all of that sort of is this kind of performative mask or this ritual mask of some sort. So I think it works the other way. Yeah, I mean, I suppose the psychological mask, I guess, if there's a difference, I mean, I guess these are complex things, might become less because you're talking about something around more authenticity or something like that. But poetry it is like acting, right? Um, so
I
that's
don't know. Hmm. It's just something nice to think about for me.
yeah.
I don't really understand it at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go for it,
Right,
Robert.
yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I'm quite struck by the narrative voice. It's quite impersonal. I mean, it doesn't talk about I very much. Most of the I character who's talking doesn't really. He sometimes gets involved, but even the one about just with, you and your father and the art ride. I mean, you hardly talk about I. It's all these actions and movements, and the horses are the focus. And most of these things in the primary school are talking from the outside. I mean, you get obviously the sort of fear and astonishment in the voice, so that we get a sort of secondary. We pick up the feelings of the narrative in a secondary way, not directly. And also, I find these comparisons when you talk about, say, this kid like saluting a sapling stiff as a fork, or the fruit on the apricots. I'm not sure, but they were like moldering planets or something. I find all these kinds of comparisons very striking. I mean, they really do a lot of work, a lot of they carry a lot of energy in a lot of those comparisons. They're all very startling and interesting. Nothing sort of sounds like I've heard this before, So I mean, Pound talked about personae in the mosque in that same way.
Right.
So sort of, you're not hiding behind it, but you're also using it as a way
exactly.
to enable the voice as well.
Yeah.
So it's a whole thing, also theory for poetics and goes into it. But anyway, I think it works incredibly effectively. And what other people have mentioned, the violence. There's this underlying violence that was going on. We're in the state of emergency in the 80s in South Africa. There's a huge amount of violence in the air, and it's sort of coming out in indirect ways. The way people are quite combative in their conversation, even the way the teachers treat the school kids, the way the fights go on between the school kids, and even the sort of tension between the father and the son, and the workers. No, it's all very. The whole drama's going on, and then the mother, the Ma character, she's like a sort of chorus in a way. She does all these background comments all the time. Quite a feat. I'm very happy with this book. I think it's fantastic, very original.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks.
Thank you, Robert.
But it does feel as if.
Thank you. Marika, go first.
No, I was just saying that somehow this, but putting this little, the characters in the school stories are very, I guess it's because the emotions and the being there is very directly recognizable. It just feels like you're there. I mean, it's something that I think,
Yeah.
well, I mean, it's probably closer to the same age thing, but it does feel to me like and I think the ability to also see the kids outside the school things and how they are in the different, yeah. I think there's a little bit of the Gert Nell feeling with the kids specific thing also come
Right.
there. But I mean I think it was quite that's part quite lovely that to get that emotional feel of that being in a school, the school, a primary
Right.
school. It with that very well. Thank you.
I mean, I think that if exactly, there's my specific story, but I think if it creates an environment that other people can relate to with their stories. And for me, it's done its job then. You know. So thanks, Marika.
Okay, thank you, Marika, and thanks, Alan, for patiently and generously answering all the
Oh,
questions.
please, no.
Okay.
Pleasure.
Is there anyone else who has anything else to say or anything they'd like to ask? If not, we can wrap up this part of the evening and take a 5 minute comfort break. And yeah, see you all at 25 to 9 South African time. I'm just going to stop the recording.